The day Grandma Eleanor passed away in the quiet of her Seattle mansion, Ryan Thompson stood in the shadows of the grand living room, his hands clasped tightly behind his back as he had done for the past 5 years. He was the caretaker the house helped, the man who had bathed her, read to her, and listened to her stories when no one else in the Harrington family had time. Isaiah Harrington, Eleanor's only grandson, arrived late that afternoon, his tailored suit rumpled from the flight from New York, where he worked as a finance analyst. "Ryan," Isaiah said softly, his voice cracking as he entered the room. "How is she?" But Ryan knew the question was more than that. It was the same look they had shared for months, the unspoken connection that had grown between them in the long nights when Isaiah visited. The family gathered soon after. Eleanor's son and daughter-in-law, Isaiah's parents, all assuming the will would name Isaiah as the heir to the multimillion-dollar estate. Little did they know the reading the next day would change everything. Ryan had come to the Harrington home half a decade earlier, fresh from a small town in Oregon where he had learned the hard way that being openly gay meant losing more than just family approval. At 25, he had answered an ad for a live-in caretaker needing someone patient and discreet. Eleanor had been 82 then, still sharp but already frail from arthritis and the early stages of heart failure. The interview had lasted 20 minutes, and she had hired him on the spot, saying, "I don't need another stranger who pities me, I need someone who sees me." Ryan had seen her, and in time he had seen Isaiah too. Isaiah first noticed Ryan during one of his monthly visits from college. He had walked into the sunroom and found Ryan reading poetry aloud to Eleanor, her head resting on a pillow, her eyes closed in contentment. The caretaker's voice was steady, calm, carrying lines from Walt Whitman that made Isaiah pause in the doorway. Later that evening, when Isaiah helped clear the dinner tray, their hands brushed and something electric passed between them. Neither spoke of it then, but the memory lingered like the scent of Eleanor's lavender sachets. Over the years, the visits grew longer, the conversations deeper. Isaiah would linger after his parents left, claiming he wanted to spend more time with his grandmother, but really he wanted to hear Ryan talk about books, about his volunteer work at the local LGBTQ youth center, about the life he had built despite everything. Ryan never pushed, never asked for more than friendship, yet his steady presence chipped away at the walls Isaiah had constructed around his own truth. By the time Isaiah turned 28, working 80-hour weeks in Manhattan, the secret had become a living thing between them. They stole moments in the garden after Eleanor fell asleep, sharing coffee on the stone bench, talking about everything and nothing. Isaiah confessed once how the pressure to be the perfect Harrington heir left him hollow. Ryan listened without judgment, his green eyes reflecting the moonlight. "You don't have to be anyone's version of perfect," he had said quietly. "Just yours." Those words had stayed with Isaiah through board meetings and family holidays, a quiet rebellion growing inside him. He had never kissed Ryan, never crossed that line because the risk felt too great. His parents still sent Christmas cards to the nice young man who takes such good care of mother, never suspecting the truth. The night Eleanor died, Ryan had been alone with her, holding her hand as her breathing slowed. She had squeezed his fingers one last time and whispered, "Tell him the truth, Ryan. Life is too short for secrets." Isaiah arrived too late to say goodbye, and the sight of Ryan's red-rimmed eyes nearly broke him. They stood together in the hallway, the rest of the family already making calls and arrangements. Isaiah wanted to reach out to pull Ryan into his arms, but the sound of his mother's heels clicking on the marble floor stopped him cold. Instead, he managed only a whispered, "Thank you for everything," before the moment slipped away. The next morning, the lawyer arrived, a thin man in a charcoal suit carrying a leather folder. The family assembled in the formal dining room, silver coffee service gleaming under the chandelier. Isaiah sat between his parents, Ryan positioned respectfully near the door as always. Mr. Caldwell cleared his throat and began reading the standard preliminaries. Then came the line that stopped every heart in the room. "To my beloved grandson Isaiah, I leave my collection of first edition books and the lake house in Montana with the request that he find his own path to happiness. The remainder of my estate, including the Seattle mansion, all investments and liquid assets, I bequeath entirely to Ryan Thompson, my faithful caretaker and friend, who showed me more kindness in 5 years than my own blood did in 50. The silence that followed was deafening. Isaiah's mother gasped, his father's face turned scarlet. "This is impossible," Mr. Harrington roared, standing so quickly his chair toppled backward. Ryan remained motionless, his expression unreadable, but Isaiah saw the slight tremble in his hands, the only sign that the world had just tilted on its axis for him too. In that single moment, everything Isaiah had buried for years rose to the surface: the love, the fear, the certainty that he could no longer hide. The will had not just redistributed money, it had exposed the truth he had been too afraid to face. And as the family erupted into accusations and demands, Isaiah realized the real inheritance was not the fortune but the courage he would need to claim the man he loved. Chaos exploded across the dining table like a storm breaking over Elliott Bay. Isaiah's mother pressed a hand to her chest, her diamond tennis bracelet catching the light. "That man manipulated her," she hissed, shooting Ryan a venomous glare. 5 years of playing the devoted servant, and now this? We'll contest it every step of the way. His father paced the length of the Persian rug, muttering about undue influence and calling their attorney in the same breath. Cousins who had flown in for the funeral exchanged shocked whispers, while the lawyer Mr. Caldwell calmly reminded everyone that Eleanor had been of sound mind, the will witnessed by 2 independent parties and notarized only 3 months earlier. Ryan stood slowly, his posture straight despite the barrage of insults. "I never asked for any of this," he said, his voice low but steady. "Mrs. Harrington made her own choices. If you want to fight it in court, that's your right, but I won't apologize for the trust she placed in me." Isaiah watched him, the man who had quietly held the family together, while they chased their own lives, and felt a surge of pride mixed with terror. He wanted to stand beside Ryan to declare that the will was right, that Ryan deserved every penny for the sacrifices no one else had made. Instead, he sat frozen, the words lodged in his throat like stones. Later that afternoon, the family dispersed to various rooms to make frantic phone calls, leaving Isaiah and Ryan alone in the sunroom for the first time since the reading. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, illuminating the same wicker chairs where they had shared countless quiet evenings. Ryan stared out at the manicured lawn, his jaw tight. "I meant what I said, Isaiah. I'll sign it over if that's what it takes to stop this war. The money was never why I stayed." Isaiah crossed the room, stopping just short of touching him. "That's not the point, Ryan. She knew. She knew about us, even if we never said the words out loud." Ryan turned, surprise flickering across his face. "She asked me once if I loved you. I told her the truth. She smiled and said, 'Good. Then make sure he loves himself enough to choose you when the time comes.'" The admission hung between them, heavy with years of restraint. Isaiah reached out, his fingers brushing Ryan's wrist, feeling the steady pulse beneath the skin. For the first time, he didn't pull away. "I do love you," he whispered, the words tasting like freedom and terror all at once. "I've loved you since the night you read her that Whitman poem and looked up at me like I mattered." Ryan's eyes softened, but he didn't close the distance. "Then why are you still standing on the other side of the room, Isaiah? Because your parents are downstairs plotting to destroy me?" The question cut deep because it was true. Isaiah had spent his entire adult life performing the role of the straight, successful Harrington heir. College girlfriends, carefully chosen family vacations with the right social circle, boardroom handshakes that never betrayed the truth. Coming out would mean losing more than money, it would mean losing the approval that had defined him since childhood. Yet standing here with Ryan, the man who had seen every version of him, the exhausted student, the distant professional, the grieving grandson, Isaiah understood that losing Ryan would cost far more. That evening the family gathered again, this time in the library, demanding a private meeting with Ryan. Isaiah's father offered a settlement, a generous one. He called it enough to buy a modest house and walk away quietly. Ryan listened politely, then refused. "Eleanor wanted me to have the house, so I could turn the East Wing into a residence for LGBTQ youth who have nowhere else to go," he explained calmly. "The investments will fund scholarships. That was her final wish, and I intend to honor it." The room erupted once more, accusations of greed flying like arrows. Isaiah watched his parents' faces twist with disbelief and something darker, prejudice they had never needed to name before. Later, Isaiah found Ryan in the garden, sitting on their bench, the one hidden behind the rose trellis. The Seattle night air carried the scent of damp earth and night-blooming jasmine. "They're never going to accept this," Isaiah said, sitting beside him close enough that their shoulders touched. Ryan nodded, staring at the stars. "I know. But I'm not the one who has to decide what acceptance is worth, Isaiah. You are." The words settled over Isaiah like a challenge and a promise. For the first time, he allowed himself to imagine a future where he didn't have to choose between love and family because he had finally chosen himself. The next weeks blurred into a whirlwind of legal threats and whispered arguments. Isaiah's mother cornered him in the hallway, one morning, her voice sharp with disappointment. "You've always been too soft on that man. Don't let sentiment cloud your judgment, son. We are Harringtons. We fight for what is ours." Isaiah met her gaze and for the first time didn't flinch. "Maybe what's ours isn't what I thought it was, Mom." He walked away, heart pounding, knowing the conversation had only just begun. Ryan kept his distance, giving Isaiah space to wrestle with the storm inside him. He spent his days meeting with architects and nonprofit lawyers, turning Eleanor's vision into blueprints while the family lawyered up. Isaiah watched from afar, admiring the quiet determination that had always drawn him to Ryan. One rainy afternoon, he drove to the youth center where Ryan volunteered and sat in the car for 20 minutes, working up the courage to go inside. When he finally did, he found Ryan surrounded by teenagers laughing over homework and snacks. The sight cracked something open in Isaiah's chest, the realization that Ryan had built a life of meaning while Isaiah had been hiding in boardrooms. That night back at the mansion, Isaiah knocked on Ryan's door, the small apartment above the garage that had been his home for 5 years. Ryan opened it wearing a faded Oregon State sweatshirt, his hair still damp from the shower. "I'm done hiding," Isaiah said, stepping inside. "I don't know how this ends, but I know I can't lose you." Ryan searched his face for a long moment, then pulled him into an embrace, the first real one they had ever shared. It wasn't dramatic or cinematic, just two men holding each other in the dim light, finally allowing the truth to breathe. The embrace lasted until the grandfather clock in the hallway chimed midnight. When they finally pulled apart, Ryan rested his forehead against Isaiah's, breathing steady. "You don't have to decide everything tonight," he murmured. "But if we're doing this, we do it together, no more shadows." Isaiah nodded, the weight on his chest lighter than it had been in years. They talked until dawn, mapping out the practicalities, the legal battle ahead, the conversations with his parents, the possibility of losing the family name entirely. Ryan never asked for promises, only honesty, and Isaiah gave it freely for the first time. Morning brought fresh storms. Isaiah's father summoned him to the study, sliding a thick folder across the mahogany desk. "Sign it," he demanded. "We're filing to have Ryan declared unfit. The doctors will testify Eleanor wasn't competent at the end. You'll inherit everything as you should." Isaiah stared at the documents, the black ink blurring before his eyes. He thought of Ryan's gentle hands adjusting Eleanor's oxygen mask, of the way he had sung old hymns when pain kept her awake. "No, Dad," he said, pushing the folder back. "I won't." His father's face hardened. "Then you're choosing him over your own blood. Think about what that means, Isaiah. The trust fund, the connections, everything." The threat hung heavy, but Isaiah felt only clarity. He left the study and found Ryan in the kitchen preparing coffee the same way he had every morning for Eleanor. "I told him no," Isaiah said simply. Ryan set the mug down and pulled him close, right there in the sunlit kitchen where anyone could walk in. It was reckless and perfect. For the rest of the day, they worked side by side, sorting Eleanor's belongings, boxing books for the Montana house, deciding which pieces of furniture would go to the youth center. Each decision felt like building a future instead of mourning the past. News of the impending lawsuit spread through Seattle's social circles faster than wildfire. Old family friends called, offering sympathy thinly veiled as concern. Isaiah's phone buzzed constantly until he silenced it. Instead, he drove Ryan to the youth center again, this time walking inside hand in hand. The teenagers greeted Ryan with cheers and Isaiah with curious smiles. One young man named Marcus pulled Isaiah aside later. "Ryan saved my life last year," he said quietly. "Gave me a place to stay when my parents kicked me out. Whatever you're fighting for, don't stop. Guys like us need more people like him." The words stayed with Isaiah long after they left. That evening they sat on the porch watching the rain sweep across the Sound. Ryan spoke about his own coming out, the father who stopped speaking to him, the mother who still sent birthday cards but never visited. "I don't want that for you," he said. Isaiah took his hand. "I don't want to live half a life anymore, Ryan. Whatever happens, we face it together." They sealed the promise with a kiss, soft and unhurried, the first of many. No one interrupted them. The house felt different now, emptier yet fuller at the same time. The lawsuit papers arrived by courier the following week. Isaiah read them in the library, the legalese accusing Ryan of everything from emotional manipulation to elder abuse. His stomach turned. He called Mr. Caldwell and scheduled a meeting for the next day. Ryan insisted on coming along. In the lawyer's downtown office, they sat side by side while Mr. Caldwell explained the strengths of their case, Eleanor's clear medical records, the video deposition she had made months earlier stating her wishes explicitly. The family may drag this out for years, he warned, but the truth is on our side. Leaving the office, they walked the streets of Seattle, the Space Needle piercing the gray sky like a beacon. Ryan stopped at a small cafe ordering 2 Americanos, the way they both liked them, extra hot. "I've been thinking," he said as they claimed a corner table. "If we win, I want to sell the mansion. Too many ghosts. We could buy something smaller, maybe up in the mountains. Start fresh." Isaiah smiled, the idea warming him from the inside. "And I'll leave the firm. Find work that actually means something. Maybe teach finance at the community college or help with the nonprofit." They talked for hours, dreaming aloud, the future no longer a distant maybe but a plan they were building together. Back home, the family had gathered again, this time with their attorney, a shark in a $3,000 suit. The meeting turned ugly quickly, accusations flying. Isaiah's mother wept theatrically while his father pounded the table. "You're throwing your life away for the help," he spat. Ryan remained calm, but Isaiah saw the hurt flicker in his eyes. That was the moment Isaiah stood up, voice ringing clear. "Ryan is not the help. He is the only person in this family who showed Eleanor real love. And he's the man I love. If that means losing everything else, so be it." The room fell silent, the truth finally spoken aloud. His parents stared as if seeing him for the first time. The silence stretched until Isaiah's father slammed his fist on the table. "You're confused, son. This is grief talking. We'll get you help." Isaiah shook his head, the words flowing easier now. "I'm not confused. I've known who I am for years. I just didn't have the courage to say it until Ryan showed me what real courage looks like." Ryan reached for his hand under the table, a quiet anchor. The family attorney began speaking about precedents and mediation, but Isaiah cut him off. "We're not settling. Eleanor's wishes were clear. Fight us if you want, but you'll lose more than money. You'll lose your son too." The next days tested every ounce of Isaiah's resolve. His mother called crying, begging him to reconsider. Cousins sent texts filled with disappointment. At the office in New York, his boss suggested a leave of absence, the subtext clear. Through it all, Ryan remained steady, cooking simple meals late at night, listening when Isaiah needed to vent. One weekend they drove to the Montana lake house, the one Eleanor had left Isaiah. The small cabin nestled among pines felt like a sanctuary. They spent the days hiking, talking about childhood dreams, and the nights wrapped in blankets on the porch watching stars. Ryan opened up more than ever, sharing stories of the youth he had helped, the ones who reminded him of his younger self. Isaiah listened and shared his own fears, the pressure to marry the right girl to produce the next Harrington heir. "I never wanted that life," he admitted. "I just didn't know how to want anything else." Ryan kissed his temple. "Now you do." The trip solidified something between them, a partnership deeper than romance. They returned to Seattle stronger, ready for whatever came next. The mediation session was scheduled for the following month in a neutral downtown conference room. Both sides arrived with lawyers, but the real battle was emotional. Isaiah's parents sat across the table, faces tight. The mediator began with facts, but emotions quickly overtook procedure. Isaiah's mother turned to Ryan, her voice trembling. "Did you ever love her, or was it always about the money?" Ryan met her gaze without flinching. "I loved her like the grandmother I never had. She taught me grace and I tried to give it back. The money was her idea, not mine." Isaiah spoke next, laying out the years of quiet service, the sacrifices Ryan had made without complaint. He described the night Eleanor died, the way Ryan had held her hand, singing until the end. Tears welled in his mother's eyes, but his father remained stone-faced. "This changes nothing," he said. "Blood is blood." Isaiah felt the old guilt rise, but Ryan's steady presence grounded him. "Blood didn't sit with her through chemo," Isaiah countered. "Blood didn't learn her favorite poems. Ryan did. And I'm choosing him." The mediator called a break. In the hallway, Ryan pulled Isaiah into a quiet alcove. "You don't have to keep fighting this alone," he whispered. Isaiah leaned into him, breathing in the familiar scent of soap and safety. "I'm not alone anymore." They returned to the table with new resolve. The session ended without agreement, but the seed of doubt had been planted in his parents' eyes. Weeks turned into months, the lawsuit grinding forward with depositions and document requests. Isaiah quit his New York job, moving permanently into the mansion with Ryan. They began renovating the East Wing together, hammering nails and painting walls, turning Eleanor's vision into reality. The youth center teens helped on weekends, filling the house with laughter and hope. Isaiah discovered joy in the simple work, the way Ryan's eyes lit up when another bed was finished. One evening after a long day, they sat on the newly painted porch, swing Ryan's arm around Isaiah's shoulders. "I never imagined this," Ryan said softly. "A home, a partner, a purpose." Isaiah turned to kiss him, slow and sure. "Neither did I. But I'm glad we're writing it together." The legal storm still raged, but inside the mansion something beautiful was taking root. The court date loomed like a dark cloud, but Isaiah and Ryan refused to let it define their days. They threw themselves into the nonprofit paperwork, filing for official status as the Eleanor Harrington Youth Residence. Ryan's contacts in the LGBTQ community brought in volunteers and donors, people who believed in second chances. Isaiah handled the finances, discovering a passion for impact investing that made his old Wall Street life feel hollow. One afternoon, Marcus from the youth center arrived with a duffel bag and a black eye. "Dad found out I'm gay," he said quietly. Ryan didn't hesitate. He set up a room, and within hours Marcus was settled, eating homemade lasagna at the kitchen table. Watching Ryan comfort the boy, Isaiah realized this was the life he wanted to build, one where love created safety instead of fear. That night he told Ryan, "I'm ready to testify. Whatever it takes." The trial began in a packed courtroom. Isaiah's parents sat on one side, stone-faced. Ryan and Isaiah sat together, hands linked, openly for the first time in public. Mr. Caldwell presented Eleanor's video deposition, her voice clear and strong despite her frailty. "Ryan Thompson is the son my heart chose," she said. "Isaiah deserves the freedom to choose him too." The courtroom murmured. Isaiah took the stand next, speaking of the love that had grown quietly and the courage it demanded. When he finished, Ryan reached for his hand again, right there in front of everyone. Cross-examination was brutal. The family's attorney painted Ryan as a predator, Isaiah as naive. But Ryan's testimony dismantled every lie with quiet dignity, detailing the medical logs, the conversations, the genuine bond. Isaiah watched with pride as the man he loved stood unbowed. The judge called a recess, and in the hallway Isaiah's mother approached them alone for the first time. "I watched the video," she said, tears in her eyes. "She really did love him. And you, Isaiah, I see how you look at each other. I don't understand it, but I'm trying." It wasn't acceptance yet, but it was a crack in the wall. The trial stretched another week. Character witnesses from the youth center testified about Ryan's impact. Isaiah's father never took the stand, choosing silence instead. On the final day, the judge ruled in their favor, the will upheld in full. The courtroom erupted in quiet applause from the supporters who had filled the back rows. Isaiah pulled Ryan into a fierce hug right there on the courthouse steps, cameras flashing around them. The news would spread, but they no longer cared. That evening they celebrated quietly on the porch with sparkling cider and Eleanor's favorite playlist. "We did it," Ryan said, smiling. Isaiah rested his head on Ryan's shoulder. "No. Eleanor did it. She gave us the push we needed." They talked late into the night, planning the future, selling the mansion, keeping the lake house, starting the residence in earnest. Isaiah felt lighter than he had in years, the weight of secrets finally lifted. The next morning Isaiah's parents called, asking to meet. They arrived at the mansion, tentative and quiet. Over coffee his father cleared his throat. "We were wrong about the will. And about you, son. It will take time, but we want to try." His mother hugged him awkwardly, then turned to Ryan. "Thank you for loving her. And for loving him. It wasn't perfect, but it was a beginning." Months later the East Wing buzzed with life. 10 teenagers called it home now, each with their own story of courage and survival. Isaiah taught a weekly finance class, helping them understand credit and budgeting, while Ryan organized group therapy sessions and weekend hikes. The mansion had transformed from a symbol of old money into a beacon of hope, just as Eleanor had intended. Isaiah and Ryan stood on the porch one crisp autumn evening, watching the leaves turn gold across the lawn. Ryan slipped an arm around Isaiah's waist. "Remember the first time we sat here?" he asked. Isaiah laughed softly. "I was terrified someone would see us." Ryan kissed his temple. "And now the whole world knows." The local paper had run a feature on the residence calling it a legacy of love. Isaiah's parents had even attended the grand opening, donating furniture and staying for dinner. Healing was slow but real. They had sold the mansion to a developer who promised to preserve its history and bought a cozy home overlooking the Sound. The lake house in Montana became their weekend escape, where they hiked and dreamed and simply were. Isaiah had started a consulting firm focused on nonprofit finance, finding purpose in work that matched his heart. Ryan continued his volunteer work now with more resources than he had ever imagined. One Sunday, they drove to the cemetery to visit Eleanor's grave, bringing fresh lavender from the garden. Isaiah placed the flowers gently. "Thank you, Grandma," he whispered. "You gave me more than money. You gave me the courage to be myself." Ryan stood beside him, hand on his shoulder. They stood in silence for a long moment, the wind whispering through the trees like approval. Back home that night, they cooked dinner together, laughing over spilled sauce and shared memories. Later, curled on the couch with a movie playing softly, Ryan turned to Isaiah. "I love you," he said simply. Isaiah smiled, pulling him closer. "I love you too. Every version of us." The future stretched before them, bright with possibility, the past no longer a chain but a foundation. As they stood together watching the sunset over the Pacific, Isaiah knew he had finally found his true self. True or false? A shocking will can be the catalyst for authentic love to conquer family prejudice and societal expectations.